Hello everyone and welcome to the SOB3D YouTube channel. Welcome back to another tutorial for IMVU creating. In today's tutorial, we'll be looking at rigging items that cover both the head and the body. And our practical example today would be a ghost cloak clothing item. So I'll equally be showing you how to make a very easy ghost cloak item in the modeling file in the SOB3D Nino Dev Kit. So this tutorial is actually an application of a previous tutorial on transferring weights in custom poses. I like to say that tutorials aren't necessarily locked into one specific thing. If you get what I'm trying to say, you can apply the knowledge you gain from one tutorial to several things, just as we are doing in this video. So we're applying the knowledge we have from the previous tutorial on transferring weights in custom poses to this video. The main difference between that video and what we'll be doing here is we'll be reversing our scaling as opposed to only the rotation. So I'll show you how to reverse scaling. So just like we did in the previous video, let's go ahead and adjust our bones to for our desired base body. So this shape we have from our previous tutorial, let's go ahead and press H to hide that. And now I'm going to rotate the bones. I'm going to start by first rotating the bones of the arm because I want my ghost cloak to drape like this. I don't want my ghost cloak to drape in a T-pose. So I'm just going to go ahead and rotate the bones of the arm. So I'm going to press R and then I'm going to bring this down by 60. Then I'm also going to bring this one by minus 60. Now it's time to do my head. So if I make my cloak with the head like this, because most heads on IMVU are scaled down, it's not going to look as smooth as I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and then press S and scale it down to the number you like. Be sure you're watching the top left corner of your screen to note the amount by which you're scaling. So when you press S alone, you're going to be scaling uniformly across all axes. So you do not have to worry about noting the axes differently. So let's just press S by 0.85. Then you would notice that the default IMVU head is also a bit wider than the normal heads you'd see in the shop. So I'm going to press SX a bit to make it a bit slimmer. Let's just make that X scaling 0.95. Like I said, take note of the values. Very important. You have to take note of the values. So I'd recommend maybe you type the values here. So let's type in general S equals to 0.85 and then S on X is equals to 0.95. Then of course we know that we rotated our bones by 60. So bones rot is equals to 60. So that's going to help us when we want to reverse our transform. So now what we need to do is apply these transforms to the body. So we're going to select the body first and then we're going to select the head next and then we're going to press Shift D and then we're going to scroll down because it created two duplicate objects. So we're going to hide the original one. So this is anim head and then we hide the first anim head, then we hide the first body. Then we're going to go into the modifiers tab. Now very important that you check preserve volume when you're applying your rotations, and then I apply my armature modifier for this one, then for the head as well. Okay, so the modifier cannot be applied to a mesh with shape key, so all you need to do is come here and then you need to click this drop down arrow and then delete all shape keys, and that is how you treat that problem. And then you go ahead and apply. Now we come and then we select the body and then we press Ctrl J to join them. So now we have one singular object which we are going to use as a reference for our ghost cloak clothing item. We're going to go ahead and export this base body to OBJ, wavefront OBJ. Okay, so make sure you have selection only. Let's call this ghost cloak base.obj. Alright, so now you can see that our skeleton has reset, but the pose is stagnant because we've applied our armature. Okay, so now we're going to go into the modeling file. Alright, this is our modeling file from the last tutorial. So let me bring this back into matcap so we can see things clearly. Let's hide this. So now we're going to import our body. So let's import that wavefront OBJ. All right. This is our ghost cloak OBJ. Select the OBJ and not the MTL. Select the OBJ. And now we have our OBJ in the scene, so we can go ahead and select this other one and press H. But before we go ahead and press H, I want you to first check the modifiers. Of course, from the last tutorial, we had a collision physics property applied to the body because we made a shirt with the base body. So it's very important that you go ahead to the physical properties and then you either remove the collision entirely by clicking here or you disable it by pressing this eye button here. So I'm just going to temporarily disable it because we might want to make items with the exact collision properties again. I went ahead and pressed H to hide the body as well. I can go ahead and hide the hands, although I doubt the cloak would be affected, especially we don't have any collisions applied to the hand. Then we have the larger head. We don't have any collisions applied here either, but for the sake of convenience, we're going to just hide it. And now we have our item, we have our base item. So what we need to do is apply a collision physics property to the base item. The default physics property should be fine. If we need to tamper with it, we will tamper it as the simulation demands. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press Shift A, and then we're going to go to mesh and then plane. So now we can tab into edit mode and press A to select everything. So make sure everything is selected, then you can scale it up by as much as you want. Turn off proportional editing for this part, so you can scale it up as much as you want. So press S, maybe 10 might be too small, so maybe scale it up a bit more ambiguously or arbitrarily. Okay, that looks fine. Now the idea is you want something of a scale that is going to cover your avatar but not clip through the floor. So if you can paint that mental picture of the amount of cloth that's going to cover the avatar but not clip through the floor, then scale it accordingly. So maybe we can scale this down a bit, or I'll just leave it at that. So now the very next important step we're going to do is everything selected, we're going to press W and then we click subdivide. Now it's very important to come, if yours doesn't pop up automatically, just make sure you click here to bring it up. So now it's very important, number of cuts, we're going to bump this up to as many as we can. That won't make our system run slow. So let's try 90. Okay, so 90 is still looking a bit spaced out. Let's try 100. Okay, so 100 looks fine. Let's tab back into object mode. Now we're going to apply a simple cloth physics property. So now this is the default cloth physics property. Go back into edit mode, select it, make sure everything is selected, then press G then Z to move it above the avatar. All right, so we have a simple cloth property applied to this plane, and we have a simple collision property applied to the base body. So I'm sure you can imagine the output. So let's go ahead into physics properties. We can bump up both our thickness inner and thickness outer. Just keep increasing the thickness outer until you are satisfied with the result. So let's just go overboard and call this 0.2. So that's 10 times the original thickness outer. Okay, so you can see we have no clipping, but you can see now the issue we have now is that our cloth item is a bit too long. So we can come back to edit mode and scale it down a bit. So let's just bring it down. So as you can see, we have a very simple and easy to make ghost cloak item. Now all we need to do is go ahead to our modifiers in our plane object, and then we're going to click on apply. First on the cloth modifier and then apply on the subdivision surface modifier. Again, it is very important that you do that subdivision after the cloth modifier and not before, because that's going to save you time. So now we have our ghost cloak item. Let's bake this. So of course we know by now that before we bake anything, we need to check that no other cameras other than the object, and then of course the cameras for the lights for what we want to bake are checked. So we can check our UV maps, but when you import objects into Blender, they have UV maps by default unless you checked otherwise. So this is the default UV map, it's just a flat plane. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into shading, and then we're going to rename this material to Ghost Cloak, or just going to call it Ghost Cloak. We don't have several parts, and then we're just going to put this in square brackets 30, and then we're going to Shift A, S, image texture, and then we're going to make a new image. We're going to call it Ghost cloak texture, and then we're going to do 256 by 512. So in case you are wondering, yes, you can change the color of your textures to whatever you want, but I just leave it at the white because as the derivable texture standard. For the sake of this tutorial, let's go ahead and change our color to something like blue. You can always desaturate it in an image editor to make a derivable version of the texture. So let's go into rendered view. So this is what our bake is going to look like in the end. We have our image texture. Make sure that your image texture is the only thing selected, or at least the most recent thing selected in your shader editor. Make sure that no other camera is enabled, and then you are ready for baking. So let's go ahead. We go into render properties, and then we scroll down, we come here, and then we click bake, and this is what our bake looks like. Obviously the image at a glance doesn't make any shred of sense, but let's just go into viewport shading. We're going to change it to solid by just clicking here, and then we're going to click on this drop down, and then we're going to select flat, and then we also select texture as well. So this is what it looks like. This is what our bake output looks like. So you can see why it makes sense that it looks this way. So now what we can do is we can, from here, first let's save this texture. So I'm just going to come here and press Alt S, and it's going to bring up the folder where I can save my image. If you want zero compression, go ahead and drag this down. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it as Ghost Cloak texture and then save as image. Then I'm going to drag the color output of this image into my base color, just so that they have an established relationship already. Then I'm going to come back into my layout view, so you can see now this is what our texture looks like and everything. So I'm going to come back into my layout view, and then I'm going to export this as an FBX. You can export it again as an OBJ, but me personally, I'm just going to use FBX for this. And then I'm going to click selected object, so it exports just this Ghost Cloak, and then I'm going to call it Ghost Cloak Unrigged. Alright, then I'm going to come now back into my studio blend file. Then I'm going to import that FBX. So I'm going to click import FBX. Then I'm going to select Ghost Cloak Unrigged. Then I'm going to come into my shading tab and make sure that yes, the texture is still applied. With PNG images, sometimes it duplicates your texture and then attaches it to the alpha. So just select these and then press X. You don't have any business with normal maps for now either, so just press X there. Click on this image. You can come to shading and see what's going on exactly with your image. Okay, so now we have our texture, and then we have it imported into our scene. So the next thing for us is to rig our item. So we're going to select the base body underneath. So let's just, if you keep clicking at a particular spot, Blender will just automatically select what's beneath. So we're going to transfer weight from this to the cloak. So we're going to select this body, and then we're going to shift select the cloak, and then we're going to control tab weight paint, then weight transfer weight, and then we're going to use nearest face interpolated, and by name add an armature modifier to the Ghost Cloak, and then you select the only armature in this scene unless you added another armature. This is what it looks like, irrespective of the fact that we don't really care what it will look like with the bigger default head. Of course, we want to still make it look reasonable for the bigger head, because even for the smaller heads now, you can see that doesn't look right. So what we can do to resolve all of this is we can go select our cloak, but duplicate this first to be sure of what you're doing, and then we can go control tab. Let's rename this object, by the way. Let's call this Ghost Cloak, Ghost underscore Cloak. Control tab weight paint mode. Then we come and select the vertex select mode. We select all the vertices. Then we're going to click on smooth. Now, how generous we can be with the smooth depends on what you want and what you're looking for. You can go ahead and select everything and then smooth everything again. And we're smoothing by all groups so that everything is uniform. Let's bump the iteration count. Let's maybe do 4. So we've added 3 to the first one we did, so that's 4. We're going to be very generous with the smoothing. Let's add 5. So we've smoothed out the weights, and then we've tested our rigging. So now it's time for us to reverse our scaling. Okay, so come back into object mode. So it's now time for us to reverse our scaling. Let's select our skeleton. Bring out your calculator. For the bones, all we need to do, of course, is we really need to change this to -60, change this one to 60. Now for the head, I recommend you calculate the scaling inverse. So just look for your calculator. Alright, so I have my calculator here. We are going to do 1 divided by 0.85. 1 divided by 0.85. file. Now you're going to type as many of these decimal places as you can. So that's 1.1764. At least 4 should be fine. So you select the head bone and then you press S, select all, and copy. Here we can copy that value. So let's see if we can paste it in Blender. So S, you press S. Now I'm moving up, so you now want to paste this value. Now you've pasted the value. There you can see now it's returned to the default head, but remember we also scaled on the X by 0.95, so we now have to do 1 divided by 0.95. Now we're going to press S, then X. Now we're going to paste that value again. And now we have the version of our cloak showing us what it will look like in the default T-pose. So we can go ahead and preserve volume and then you apply. So now let's unhide the default body. Select your skeleton, then select all bone, Alt R. Alright, let's bring our armature back onto the cloak and then everything is fine. Let's go ahead and export our objects. So we can go ahead and select the base object, select the skeleton or whatever export method you wish to use. This is just the method I'm using in this video. Then I'm going to use file, export, FBX, selected objects, uncheck bake animation, uncheck add leaf bones, leave the scale as 1, and then you can press and you can call it a ghost cloak rig. So now I've exported my FBX. It's now left for me to import it into IMVU. So I'm going to go to create. I'm going to search for SOB3D. So we're going to use Nino empty clothing. Alright, so for the sake of this tutorial, I just went ahead and got the Nino body base so we can see it's in perfect condition. So now I'm going to come and import my FBX. So it's ghost cloak rigged. Okay, so you click setup FBX. We're going to put this in a random number for now, but you can change this to a 3-digit number. This is why we linked our baked texture to our color node so that it just adds the texture at once, and then you can see we have just one material here. Next, no animation, and then review. So you can see while it's looking rather rough, you can see that we've achieved basically what we set out to do. The point of this is to show how to rig items that connect both the head and the body, so you can apply this to any item of yours that would connect both the head and the body. That's how you go about this process. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to comment other topics that you would like to see covered. Doesn't necessarily have to be about IMV creating, might be about general Blender usage. Be sure to leave a like on the video as well. Subscribe to this channel for more content like this, and thank you once again for watching.